The easiest format of data that we can probably work with in the internet without having to get into a bunch of detail, and something you probably would want to know or have used already, is HTML. And so before we get into code too much, let's talk about HTML concepts, where HTML comes from. Now, this is not going to be a tutorial on HTML. I'm there's plenty of resources out there to teach you HTML, but I want to give you a kind of a primer if you haven't done it before to get used to the notion of HTML. HTML being Hypertext Markup Language. That's what it stands for if you haven't heard that before. And so really what HTML is it's kind of a way of decorating some basic boring text document. Everything kind of starts as just some plain text somebody wants to write, and I use HTML to organize that by saying, well, this is the first paragraph, the second paragraph, this is the header, this is where your links go, stuff like that. But also it allows me to change the colors or set the size or all those different things I want to do. And it does that through what's called a tag. So an HTML tag is a specialized version of an XML tag. XML standing for Extensible Markup Language, which is basically XML is a way of annotating data. In a typical XML document, you would say, well, let's say we have a student. Well, this would be where your first name is. This is where your last name is. This is where your student ID is. This is where um, your class schedule is, for example. And so HTML has predefined XML tags that render information to a browser. The idea of HTML is that your browsers, your Chromes and Firefoxes and Safaris and Edges, know exactly by definition what HTML is supposed to do with specific data, and thus it can consistently render it as the appropriate size and color and shape and position, all those different things. So the way that works is ridiculously simple. As I said, we start with some basic text using HTML tags. And so we can decorate that HTML tag, for example, in this case, by putting the angle bracket B angle bracket, and then the close tag, that's the open tag, the angle bracket slash B angle bracket. That tells us that using HTML tags is supposed to be bold. You can see the animation made it bold when I put that tag around it. And I can put another tag around that. I can nest the tags right there. And when I nest the tag as an H1, you can see it became the header up there. Now, I left the text here in position so we can see what's going on. It's a little bit fanciful animation here. But we can see the H1 tells it that this is a header, and we want this header to be bold in this case. We can nest tags one inside of the other to add additional information. So the sorry, my oops. Yes, it zoomed in on this for some reason. I don't know what just happened right there. I clicked something accidentally there. So most of the tags here are paired, and they also certainly can be nested. And so the idea is there's a start tag, some data in the middle, and an end tag, which is the same as the start tag, but with a little slash inside of it before the name. There are cases where you have single tags as well. Like, so if you want to just put a line break in, you can do a BR slash tag inside of there. You'll learn about that as you go. And so if the tag doesn't need data inside of it, I don't need to have a start and end tag, but I can. And so some common tags that you might see as you work with HTML, if you haven't done it before, is your header tags like we saw, H1, H2, I think it goes down to H6. So 6 different levels of headers. The paragraph tag is for text inside of it. If you want to create a link, you use an A tag with an href parameter inside of it. So I can also put parameters inside of tags to customize them further to tell more information about that. You have the image tag, which places images on there, and then there's also a video tag to put videos on your page. The form tag is indicating that I'm going to collect some data to send to the server from the user, and then that form is filled internally with a bunch of input tags that say these are the tags that are part of the form. Again, we nest tags to give a hierarchy to our page. Then you may have seen some bullet lists and order lists tags, the UL and OL, which allow you to put bulleted list of items on the screen, and then the LI tells you this is an item to go in that list, a list item tag. So those are a bunch of different formatting tags, but there's also structural tags we should be aware of, like the header of a page, which tells you information about the page, like the page's title that shows up on the top bar, when you visit a web page in the browser. Then there's the body, which shows the content, or we can use table tags to create tables inside of there, which includes rows and cells. And you probably will see a lot of div tags if you go and process a page, because a div creates structure inside of a page. It's different parts of a page. It's div tags are really great for being able to make dynamically loaded pages that change over time. So in general, HTML is a static page. It's just like writing a Word doc or any other electronic document you want to see. It just shows you data at that point in time. But as you go learn about more of the web, there's all sorts of ways to use programming languages to change dynamic elements like things that go inside of div tags. But there's another pair with HTML that's important to know about, which is this notion of a cascading style sheet, CSS, which is generally used for styling HTML. So where we saw the bold tag earlier, we don't necessarily want to have a tag around every time we set a font or the color of text or the size of a text. So a cascading style sheet allows us to first and foremost separate the content of a page from the presentation of a page. And that allows us to dynamically style it as well. So we can place things on the screen, we can set the colors and fonts, we can use CSS tags to organize and tag data as well. We can say, well, this is a required input field versus an optional input field. And so a required field, maybe italicize and make it a different color. But we want to dynamically do that because for people who maybe are sight impaired and are colorblind or something like that, we might want to add a different styling there. Might add something different. That's where CSS allows us to swap out style sheets. We can do that for aesthetic purposes. We can let people customize themes when they visit your web page by swapping out style sheets, or we can allow different functional elements as well. Um, so the idea of HTML and the thing that's important, that the reason I want to introduce it here, is when I have well-formed HTML that uses closed tags and open tags, that nests things consistently, that uses style sheets to tag things as being different style information consistently as well. Like, hey, this is required versus not required. They essentially become like little building blocks, kind of like the pyramid here, where each block can be queried individually, and we can find information in a web page because we know the format, we know the structure, we know the pattern by which the page is going to be constructed. And that's really where we're going to spend a lot of our time playing with data and the web now, is parsing out HTML and web pages to be able to pull data out as a way of practicing using the internet as part of our as part of our programming.